Bay Area Air Quality Management District. So we just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. We really want to take the time to thank them. Without their support, this webinar would not be possible, especially our promotional partners. We believe these webinars are providing a lot of great resources and learning opportunities for local governments throughout the state, and we really want to try our best to reach all parts of the state we live in. For upcoming events, due to 2020 working out, we shifted all this forum to take place online. And so it is taking place in the webinar format. You can see up here, we have upcoming webinars that you can go directly to our website to register for. You most likely went through the website to register for this webinar as well. To create more of a space for connection, we're also trying our best to provide spaces for networking. Our upcoming networking activity will be taking place September 22nd. It is going to be bingo night. Essentially, we're having people interact with each other and do personal bingo, and winners will also have the opportunity to get a gift card of $50 to a local business of their choice. We also created a Seek peer-to-peer network. It is essentially a LinkedIn group that provides people with the opportunities to connect with each other outside of the webinar space and networking activities. If you're interested in joining, you can just go to this link right here. We will also be sending a link directly in the chat so you can connect with your peers and on the LinkedIn. For this webinar, we do encourage you all to chat with one another. If you have questions specifically for our panelists, we do encourage you to use the Q&A section. That makes it easier for us to track your questions because we really want to make sure all of your questions and points of concern get addressed during this webinar. And so now I'm going to give it away to Jennifer West.
Thank you. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Jennifer West, and I'm a program manager at Stop Waste in Alameda County. We are a government organization that works on supporting our local governments in the county with pollution and waste reductions, including energy efficiency. And I'm really happy to bring to you three fabulous speakers today for our panel. Before I go into their bios just a little bit, I want to set the stage here for why we're talking about decarbonization and what we mean by that. I think of a three-legged stool when I think of decarbonization. That there are three essential parts. One is energy efficiency to reduce the energy load in a building. The second is having a clean electrical grid, which we do have in California, and it's getting better all the time. And the third leg is fuel substitution, or switching from gas to electric. We call it electrification. All three of these parts are important, and they're all happening right now in California. I also want to mention the importance of equity in this conversation, with both the pandemic this year hitting hard in our communities and hitting unevenly, and also the anti-racist activism that's happening here and around the country. I believe that equity is going to need to be centered in our work as we move forward. We'll come back to this also after the panelists present in our discussion at the end. And that brings me to actually your questions. As Tia mentioned, there is a Q&A portion, and we hope that as you listen to the presentations today and you have questions, you will type your questions there. There is a way that you can look at other people's questions and upvote those or say what is interesting to you as well. And that will really help us with the conversation at the end. So feel free, we're not going to take questions during the presentations, but at the end, we'd love to see what you would like to hear us talk more about. I want to introduce the three speakers today. There are full bios on the website if you want to read those, but a brief version here. We have Rory Cox, who is a senior analyst in the energy division of the California Public Utilities Commission, where he's worked since 2012. He's a staff expert for building decarbonization policies, and he's managing the Tech Initiative, which you'll hear more about, a program that aims to transform the California market for low emissions heating technologies in space and water heating. Then we'll hear from Abby Young. She is the Climate Protection Manager of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's Climate Protection Program. And during her 12 years at the district, Abby has developed and overseen over $7 million in local climate protection grant programs, Prior to working at the Air District, Abby was the director for IGLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. And then we'll hear from Jenny Berg. She has been the Energy Programs Manager of the San Francisco Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN, since its inception in January of 2013. She also serves as co-chair of the California Energy Efficiency Coordinating Committee, or CAKE, as we like to call it. Jenny strongly believes that regional strategy and implementation is key to addressing critical issues such as climate change, transportation, and air quality. I've already introduced myself, and so now I want to hear a little bit about you. I would love it if we could launch the first and second poll, so you're ready to respond. We'd love to see where you are from and who you're working for so that we have a sense of that. Feel free to check all that apply on these responses. I did peek at the registration list, and I do want to shout out a few cities that have the most attendees today. Number one is Sacramento. So I'm really pleased to see a bunch of folks who live or work in Sacramento joining us. Second was Los Angeles, and third was San Diego, very close behind. So I'm really pleased to see people outside of the Bay Area, which is where I do most of my work, and seeing folks from around the state. So you'll have another, I don't know, 30 seconds maybe? Shouldn't be too hard to do the multiple choice on the poll. And then this is where do you work or live, and you can pick one, and then you can always pick other. I did see some folks who are from out of state as well who registered. We will have more polls coming in between the speakers as well, so heads up on that. And as I mentioned previously, if you do have questions for the speakers, we'll save the questions for the end, but you can put them in as we go. Are we ready for the results of the first two polls? Is it possible to show both? Or do we need to do one at a time? Here is where do you work and live? So as I predicted, we have more folks from Southern California, which is fabulous, and almost an equal number here from the Bay Area. We have people from the Central Valley as well, and from the coast, and there's some other responses, 3. Thanks for that. And then the other poll, can we see the results of that too? Fantastic. So local government wins, 28 out of 68 folks on, but we have also a number of nonprofits, consultants, state government, regional agencies, and a few CCA folks and advocacy and students. Thank you. Great. All right, I have a quick lightning round for our speakers before we jump into the presentations. And you're only going to have about 30 seconds to answer this. It's not an in-depth conversation right now. It's really just to understand what we're talking about in your perspective. In the title of this webinar, we use the term full throttle, which is actually, it's kind of a great term because it harkens back to a vintage automobile for me. But what does decarbonization full throttle look like? The full throttle is with full energy or with great intensity. Rory, I'm gonna go Rory, Abby, Jenny, and you just have 30 seconds. I'm really not gonna give you long. What would, in your vision, decarbonization full throttle look like? Rory?
Sure. How about 3 C's? Low cost, knowledgeable contractors, and engaged cities. Get all 3 of those, we'll go full throttle.
Thank you. Okay, Abby, I'm turning to you.
Sure. I think for each agency or organization, it means using everything you have to the maximum extent possible, not just politically doable, but possible. And for the Air District, with building decarb, that means that we are, for the first time ever, looking at rulemaking and looking at how we might use our regulatory authority in this space.
Thanks, Abby. Jenny, let's hear from you.
Mandated electrification with the phased approach and a recognition that one size does not fit all.
Great. Well, I hope we'll get into that a little bit more, but thank you for your perspectives on that. So without any further ado, I am going to turn this over to Rory Cox from the CPUC to do his presentation. It'll be approximately 10 minutes, and then we will have another poll. Thanks. Rory?
Sure. Great. Thanks, Jennifer. And thanks also to the LGC folks for doing such a great job of organizing this and running through all this technology and keeping this a dynamic presentation. My slides, there they are. Yes, my name is Rory. I've been with the PUC for about 8 years, as Jennifer said. And if we can, I think I go like that. And it advances? No, does it? Serena, what do I do to, it says I can control, but.
Try your arrows, your right and left arrows on your keyboard. Maybe click once on your screen and then try that when it comes back.
Okay. Sorry, folks.
That's all right. A little hiccup. We have time for this.
It's the first presenter curse, I guess.
We've all been there.
Let's see. LGC folks. Serena, are you going to share the slides again?
Apologies. I don't know what's up with my PowerPoint, but it's just not advancing through the slides.
Do you want me to try and pull up mine instead?
I can present mine if that.
Yeah, I have mine ready if you want to do that as a backup and just put me on.
Okay, yeah, Rory, that'd be great if you could share your screen directly. Apologize for the snafus.
Hold on a second. Let me get it ready. Whoops. Okay. Hold on just a second. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Sure can. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And you want to put it in presentation mode?
Yeah, I know. I'm working on that. All right. So there we go. Just to give folks a sense of what needs to happen in terms of really moving the where the state wants to go with decarbonization, this kind of shows you adoption curves of how fast we need all the new appliances of both space heating and water heating appliances to change from natural gas to high efficiency heat pump electrical models in order for this to in order to decarbonize the heating sector by 2040. And you can see it's a pretty steep curve. It's a pretty daunting task.
And Rory, I'm not seeing the curves yet. Can you go to the next slide and put it in presentation mode? Right now I'm seeing the intro slide.
Oh, weird. Okay. Okay, I see hold on a second. It says I'm screen sharing.
There you go. Now I see the two graphs. Thank you.
Okay. Did it just change?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so back to this, these curves show how daunting the task is in terms of when we need to, when all new appliances need to turn into to electrical models from the natural gas models that are currently the incumbents. It's a pretty steep adoption curve, and that's what we're trying to foster with our programs. This just gives you this is a snapshot of the programs that the PUC is now looking at in terms of and working to implement in terms of incentives and other programs to convert these appliances. I'm talking mostly about water heaters and furnaces, but to convert these appliances to electric heat pump models. And it's a variety of different programs and sub-programs within these programs. But the bottom line is that we're overseeing and committed to implementing over $380 million worth of programs in the next year. And that number is probably low because we really don't know how much the energy efficiency programs are going to invest into this. So we're really making a big investment into decarbonizing heating technologies. And this kind of shows you down the supply chain what all the different sub-programs are doing. This is not a complete list, but you can see that we're kind of dividing these things up into the upstream, which is the manufacturer stage of things. We have the tech initiative, the HVAC statewide energy efficiency program, a plug load program. All those programs are incentivizing manufacturers to one degree or another to convert to efficient heat pump technologies. Midstream is distributors and contractors. And again, the tech initiative, the Bay Run electrification program, some others will do some midstream interventions. And then downstream, the IOUs have a number of programs from electrifying communities in the San Joaquin Valley that have been left off the natural gas grid. The Water Saver program, there's a number, which is kind of like a demand response program. There's a number of programs that the IOUs are doing, and the non-IOUs, such as Marin Clean Energy, SMUD, MCE. This is just a partial list of the non-IOUs. So there's a lot of activity going on here. It's hard to keep track of. It can be a little confusing, but the good news is that there is a lot of activity happening. I'm going to focus for the rest of my talk mostly on these programs that were brought about by this bill, SB 1477, which is a $200 million program over 4 years. And there's actually two, it's a bill that is for 4 years, and it is funding two programs. One is the BUILD program, which is all about new construction. And the law says that 75% of the funding must go to low-income residential housing. And it should lead to no increase in utility bills, and there needs to be an outreach plan. And there's the TECH program, which is all about, this is kind of a market transformation program, and is mostly focused on the upstream and the midstream. And the idea is to put as much funding into these things, into technologies that are at the early stage of market development, so that we can get to that cost issue that I mentioned before. Right now, heat pump appliances are more expensive than the incumbent. We need to bring that down. We also need to bring the installation costs down, and that's what tech is all about, mostly focusing on existing homes. There is these programs. We will have an evaluation of the program, and like I said, 40% of the funding will go to BUILD, 60% will go to tech. Administrative costs capped to 10%, and we will have an evaluator that will be doing some ongoing real-time data collection. These are the things that they'll be looking at: the cost per metric ton of avoided GHG emissions, projected bill savings, the market share for eligible technologies will be what tech will be evaluated on, and participant bill savings. There are other sub-metrics that are still to be determined, but these are sort of the main ones. And there will be an emphasis on MEN, because we know that not a lot of people are aware of these, of the importance of decarbonizing, and especially decarbonizing these appliances that are inside their homes. So both these programs are putting some budget into customer awareness and some demonstration of customer market transformation behavior. And we're also focusing on refrigerants. Right now, the incumbent technologies have most of them have high global warming potential refrigerants. It's sort of a little bit of the dirty secret that's sort of embedded in these in heat pumps and air conditioners and lots of other appliances. The refrigerants that are inside these appliances, if they leak, they can be very damaging to the climate. Those numbers you see, that 100-year GWP, those are all numbers that are greater than the global warming potential of carbon dioxide, which is considered zero in this context. So, for instance, R410A is 2,088 times the global warming potential of just plain carbon dioxide, which we know is already damaging the climate. So for low GWP refrigerants. They are out there. They're in wide use in Europe and Asia, but not here. But we really want to transform the market to shift these low GWP refrigerants into the appliances that are sold here in California in order to not undercut the purpose of these programs. So, and I think I actually already showed this slide. I'm sorry about that. And okay, somehow I'm repeating. Okay, I don't know how that happened, but the 3 slides repeated somehow. Anyway, the build program, the new construction program is the law says that it has to be 75% low income and disadvantaged community residential new construction, but the way we are working with the CEC to implement it will be 100% low income. And however, funds that are unspent after 2 years of the end of the program may be repurposed to go market rate, but we really want to foster that low income sector. And the CEC is not a tool to estimate program-driven bill savings, and the incentives could be for either a subdivision or just a single-family home being built on its own. All buildings must be all electric, no gas line extensions. They must show model GHG savings above the standards, the baseline of a mixed fuel building. And they can incentivize any combination of measures, including energy efficiency, demand response, electric batteries, or beyond code solar. And the CEC has the flexibility to adjust the incentive levels based on participation rates, et cetera. And there is a draft implementation plan that the CEC put out a few weeks ago that is available on their website. You can contact me if you need help finding that. Then there's the tech initiative, and this is what is the market transformation program for $120 million that we're funding this at. And this is really based on consumer education, training, and like I said, midstream and upstream incentives. We will be working with the implementer, who we are now in the process of hiring to identify and target the heating equipment that's at an early stage of market development. We will be working with them to develop guideline and evaluation metrics, implement outreach strategies for hard to reach customers, and provide for job training and employment opportunities. And I just really want to emphasize here the importance. I did say contractors were one of the C's at the beginning. I really think that contractors are going to be key to the success or failure of these programs. Most people, when they buy a water heater or an HVAC system, they don't install it themselves. They usually hire someone to do it unless they're very crafty. And it's the contractor that has that kitchen table conversation that is very pivotal in this whole process. So as I said, we're looking at we're doing a competitive solicitation now for the tech implementer. We're working with Southern California Edison on that, and that's underway right now. That's the end of my presentation, although I do have a little bit of late breaking news that happened after I put these slides together and after it was approved, so I didn't update it. But we put out a staff proposal last week that addresses 3 different things that are pretty exciting. One is incentive layering. So the staff proposal has a methodology that we propose for how to put together all these programs so that they make sense for the contractors, and they make sense for consumers, and they make sense for everybody, because a lot of these incentives are in overlapping territories and for overlapping things. So that's one part of this staff proposal. The other part, the second part, is all about rebuilding after wildfires and disasters. We have a few programs that were piloted after some wildfires that happened last year and the year before that have been going on in PG&E and Edison's territory, but we want to have a more permanent program because unfortunately these fires are not going to go away, and other disasters may be upon us too, although I don't really want to say that right now, but knock on wood. And the third thing is that it has a proposal for a a different baseline tariff for so that people that get these electric appliances can be on a rate that won't increase their bills over the month. And so that staff proposal is out. We're going to have a workshop on it on September 15th, and then we'll do public comments after that. My email address is right there if you're interested and you haven't received, or you would like to know more about that stove proposal. You can drop me a line or give me a call. I can also steer you in the direction of that CEC build proposal as well, the implementation plan. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. We'll turn it back over to Jennifer. I guess
That's great. Thank you, Rory. Thanks for the presentation and for the update at the end on the new staff proposal. We are going to launch another poll for those of you with your fingertips at the ready. We'd like to hear from you about the pace of decarbonization. Are you thinking full throttle for your needs and your interests? Are you wanting to follow the speed limit a little more, a medium kind of cruising speed, or are you cautious and easygoing? Are you looking at baby steps? And this may, reflect your particular role, but we're curious what pace you're looking for the folks who are on this webinar today. And you have about 10 more seconds to pick which one you'd like to be. You can't pick more than one, I think, on this. Although, it depends on what you're working on, perhaps. So I'll let Dana close that when it looks like we've had a good response. And let's see what they said. All right. Well, that's probably why you're at this webinar, because you're looking for full throttle decarbonization, and try saying that 5 times fast. So more than half of you, and it looks interesting how the responses go down in numbers as well. So we could talk more about that perhaps when we get to the end of the panels. Thank you. So the next poll, actually, I'm going to ask Dana to launch right now as well. This is how best to decarbonize, and this one you can choose more than one. Who should be leading on these efforts? Do you think it's up to local governments because they have a unique perspective? Are regional agencies, maybe those that can actually regulate appliances? Are we looking for state leadership? And we have some direction anyway from the state, of course. The utilities, so IOUs, the investor-owned utilities, but also the publicly owned utilities. Those are the municipal power authorities. The CCAs, the community choice aggregators that have moved into the procurement world of energy. The market, letting it do its thing. We have builders, contractors, or architects, the designers, households, individuals, all of the above, or you could chat and other if I didn't come up with the answer you like. And we'll give you a few more seconds to select who you think should be leading on decarbonization efforts. I see in the chat, engineers and inventors, energy storage. That's great. Great, and the results from today's webinar attendees. Wow, so people could select more than one, which is why we have robust responses to many of these, but state leadership is really key. 67% of folks chose that. The next one is local governments and then regional agencies. We have still strong interest in seeing the utilities and the CCAs lead. And then I need to recognize the all of the above. A quarter of you said all of the above. So that's every possible lead, and that would probably go along with some of the full throttle folks, I'm assuming. All right, well, thanks for that input. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Abby Young from the Air District, who's going to talk about air quality and health benefits to increase decarbonization efforts. Abby.
So I'm not sure I know how to share my screen.
So Abby, you didn't need to. I think that Tia is going to give you control of her screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll reshare your presentation.
I clearly didn't know what I was doing.
I know. Well, we mixed it all up, you know.
All right.
So now Abby, you should be able to press the forward arrow to move it along.
Okay, great. Which I will. Oh, I see. Down. The forward arrow there. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Okay.
Great, thank you. And before you start, Rory, you can turn off your video for now, just to be less distracting for folks, but also feel free to look at some of the questions. There may be some you want to answer in a written way instead of taking it to the discussion. Thanks, Abby.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I am with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and probably looking by the categories of folks that are on this webinar, you probably are pretty much all aware of what air quality management districts do. This shows a little map of what we cover. It's the majority of the 9-county Bay Area. We've got over 100 cities and counties, so it's a lot of jurisdictions. And basically what we do and what all air districts do is we try to achieve state and federal clean air standards in order to protect public health. We're public health agencies. And the Bay Area Air District has also added to its mission to protect the global climate. And we do this through a variety of tools, through regulations and rulemaking, through permitting, through grants and incentives, planning efforts like developing our own regional air quality plans, and through the CPUC work. We develop thresholds of significance that we adopt for air quality and greenhouse gases under CEQA. We provide guidance to lead agencies on how to meet those thresholds and do analysis, and we also comment on CEQA projects. We have an extensive air monitoring network and an air modeling program. We run the Spare the Air program. We do conduct emissions inventories and research. We do extensive community engagement and communications and marketing, and we do a lot of direct work with local governments. And so I'll talk about how we bring many of these tools to bear on the issue of building decarbonization. So in 2017, I had mentioned that we do regional air quality plans. So the last one that we adopted was in 2017. We called it Spare the Air, Cool the Climate, a blueprint for clean air and climate protection in the Bay Area. The focus of this regional clean air plan was actually greenhouse gases and climate protection, although of course it included all other air pollutants as well. The heart of this clean air plan is a strategy of 85 different performance measures, strategies that span the 9 economic sectors of the state's climate change scoping plan. So the plan, we really tried to throw all of our tools at it. We sometimes call it the kitchen sink plan. And highlighted here is the building sector, and that's of course what I'm going to focus on. So first I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about what are we talking about when we, at least in the Bay Area, when we talk about emissions from greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. So this is a pie chart of our 2015 base year inventory. And this is roughly how greenhouse gas emissions break out. Now, what I want to point out though, oh God, I advanced my own slides, but not your slides. There we are. Whoops. Now, how do I go back? Oh, this is frustrating. How do I get, I'm keep going forward. I'm trying to go back and.
Can you use your.
I got it now. I got it.
Thanks, Abby.
I think I got it. All right, we'll see. So, as I said, pie chart 2015 Bay Area emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So it's the yellow and gray wedges that represent building energy emissions. So air districts do emissions inventories a little bit differently than local governments do. Local governments capture all emissions within the building sector, whereas what air districts do is we separate out electricity emissions that are produced by power plants. So we do a little more source specific inventorying. So that yellow wedge that says buildings 10%, that represents just the natural gas use coming from buildings, and maybe a little bit of, you know, other fossil fuel, propane a little bit here and there, but mainly that's natural gas use. And then the 14% in energy use is electricity production. So that's a proxy for electricity use. So really it's about 24% of the greenhouse gas emissions represented by buildings in the Bay Area. And within that 24%, the largest share comes from the residential buildings. Okay, so when we do look at residential natural gas use specifically, this is roughly how it breaks down. You know, a little bit more for space heating than water heating, and then a, you know, respectable chunk for cooking. The interesting thing about the Bay Area is because of all our microclimates, space heating is very uneven across our region. And so that's an average, but water heating is pretty constant. And so therefore, when we, as a regional agency, when we think about a regional approach to something, for us, it made a lot of sense to begin by looking at water heating. So when we talk about building decarbonization, we're thinking mainly about three factors. Efficiency in the sense of improving building insulation using high efficiency appliances and other, you know, approaches that reduce energy consumption. Electrification, of course, by replacing fuel combusting appliances with efficient electric appliances, which, as we know, throughout California, and especially in the Bay Area, as we're a little bit ahead, I think, of the state as a whole, in terms of greening and decarbonizing our electric grid, thanks to all the to PG&E and all the community choice energy programs we have in the Bay Area. And then the last piece of this is realizing a future with smarter and grid connected appliances for better load management, so that we can maximize electricity use at times when renewables are generating the largest share of our electricity. Okay. So as I mentioned, incentives, grants and incentives is definitely a big part of what we do. And the Air District has developed a building decarbonization strategy using incentives and looking at 4 key areas of focus in addition. So first, we directly work with local government staff, and this direct connection and support of local government staff has really been a cornerstone of our climate protection work since its beginning. This has become even more important with the buildings work that we're doing because of the authority that cities and counties have to pass ordinances and local building codes, in addition to leveraging permitting and other tools to require or encourage efficiency and electrification. Now, as I mentioned at the top, with the lightning round question, the Air District is also exploring our own rulemaking abilities to address emissions from indoor appliances. Now we've done this for non-greenhouse gases, like for NOx, to address indoor health issues, but looking at this for greenhouse gases and for the purposes of reducing greenhouse gases is very new territory for us. So this is something, I'm using words like exploring and potential because I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. But third is to strengthen coordination with organizations like the Building Decarbonization Coalition, which is literally a coalition of public agencies, building industry stakeholders, energy providers, environmental organizations, all working to accelerate building electrification. And it's really been helpful to us to develop a partnership with BDC. But other important partners for us have included the Bay Area Regional Collaborative and the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, BayREN, and Jenny Berg from BayREN will be presenting as well, in actively finding and implementing some of these solutions. And then finally,
we're going to have to move quickly through the rest of your presentation.
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Yep. So I just really quickly, there are limits to the Air District's ability to do rulemaking, but there are many limits. I can go into those in detail, but I for time purposes, I won't. We want to also think about, if we do adopt a region-wide rule, what might the impacts be on equity? What might cost burdens be? What might impacts on the workforce and other stakeholders be? So these are things, this is why we don't just launch into region-wide rulemaking. With the Building Decarbonization Coalition, we developed a online clearinghouse for local government staff support called the Clean Building Compass. It's got, we encourage you to, it's online now. We encourage you to explore it, and also encourage you to invite us to present on it to your group. It is designed to provide high quality, very detailed model policies, best practices, case studies, policy tools for local government staff that don't necessarily have the resources or expertise to bring their own policies and projects to fruition. So that, we hope, will be a very helpful tool. About a year and a half ago, we awarded some grants in the Bay Area to focus on reducing greenhouse gases from existing buildings, and those focused on heat pump water heater incentives. And so we gave a collection of about 4 grants to public agencies to work in coordination to address all parts of the supply chain, focusing on incentives and coordinated monetized incentives for homeowners to try to stimulate the market and really get these products out and buy down the cost, especially for low-income households. And so finally, the last piece that I wanted to talk about is a project where we're integrating climate protection and our clean air and public health goals through the Contra Costa County Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. And again, with a bunch of partners, we're engaging in this project that is targeting a swath of Contra Costa County that is an asthma corridor with very low income populations. And so what we're doing is we're trying to mitigate both asthma triggers and greenhouse gases by assessing and then funding interventions that will reduce both asthma triggers and greenhouse gases through things like energy efficiency, weatherization, replacing natural gas appliances. And so, we're hoping that through this mix of rulemaking, incentives, partnerships, supporting local governments, and then integrating climate with our other air quality and public health efforts, that we'll actually be able to accelerate this transition.
Great. Thank you, Abby, for your great presentation. And I am going to actually skip the next polls just in interest of time. We may have time to get to them afterwards. We'll see how quickly Jenny and I go. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny. I want to make a comment that there's some great questions in the Q&A, and if you haven't had a chance to go look at those and kind of do a thumbs up on the ones you like, please do, because that'll help us to prioritize those. We will not be able to answer all the fabulous questions, but it'll be good to have that conversation afterwards. So thank you, Abby, and I'd like to turn it over to Jenny Berg from BayREN.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So Rory's talked from the perspective of what's happening on the state level, both policy and regulatory, and Abby's spoken about from a regional agency that has both rulemaking and resources. I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of an implementer that has benefited from both of those two agencies. So I'll start with a very brief introduction about what BayREN is, and then talk about how we've taken a portfolio approach to electrification. And then Jennifer will finish off with the regional heat pump water heater program that she's leading. Did my slide? Okay, three's the charm. So the Bay Area Regional Energy Network was approved in 2012 to be a program administrator of energy efficiency programs. We are one of 3 regional energy networks across the state. BayREN itself is a collaboration of the 9 Bay Area counties, and our territory is the San Francisco Bay Area. We are limited by commission directives as to the types of programs that we can offer. And because of that, we are not held to a cost effectiveness threshold. I would like to say at the outset that BayREN, first and foremost, is an energy efficiency implementer. So I was really pleased to hear from really all of the panelists about energy efficiency being one of the legs on the stool, because in my experience, a lot of time, energy efficiency gets lost in the conversation around electrification. So that is always at the forefront of what we do, because that, of course, is we are ratepayer funded. So those are the limits on our funding. Because we are not held to a cost effectiveness standard, we really were able to be more flexible with implementing electrification throughout our portfolio, because electrification is not cost effective, and the TRC for our portfolio has suffered as a result. And I bring this up because that's a real barrier to more increased adoption of electrification in the statewide energy efficiency portfolio. I would really like to acknowledge the actions that are taken by the CPUC, and Rory himself is leading a lot of these efforts with the tech initiative. It's in my opinion, they're really going outside of the traditional cost effectiveness and CPUC type methodology that have been, have kind of prevented some of the activities in the past. So I really think that the CPUC is at the forefront, and very excited to see where these proceedings continue. Sorry, okay. So BayREN is Electrifying the Bay Area campaign. Fits into our model of thinking beyond traditional energy efficiency, and is also very much in line of our vision of the RENs as helping the state meet their aggressive goals, as well as being part of the state's energy future. We were able to make these changes when the CPUC changed the three-prong test that allowed for fuel substitution. So I'm now going to talk just briefly about the electrification activities that we have implemented. So our single family Home Plus program is an energy upgrade rebate program. We target middle income homeowners and renters. And the customer selects from a list of measures, and they must use one of our participating contractors. Rory had touched on the need for an expanded workforce in electrification. And so that's been our focus, particularly the last couple of months, and have been very, very pleased with the interest in contractors. Our program, our single family program since the beginning has always focused on specialty contractors, bringing new contractors into the energy efficiency workforce. And we see electrification as being in line with that, and also being a big opportunity for electricians and plumbers to form partnerships. So the way that we have been communicating about our new electrification activities is one, to leverage other efforts. There's quite a few CCA programs, the regional program that Jennifer runs, building decarbonization campaign and other existing activities. We've used that as kind of a channel to let people know about our program. And the way that we communicate with the customers is really from a health and safety perspective, with getting rid of gas appliances and other technologies in the home. And this is a list of the electrification measures and the associated rebates that we currently offer. Next, we have a green labeling program, which is really, it's a DOE program, and Stop Waste, who's a BayREN member agency, is the regional lead through DOE for this program. So because it is a DOE program, there's not a lot of changes that can be made, but we have in 2020, we have a new pilot that was launched to better align the home energy score with the BayREN goals, as well as the state goals around electrification. We are providing training to the assessors that actually do the scores on the benefits of electrification, and training them to look for electrification in the home. If they participate and as part of the score, they do the electrification analysis, then they'll get an additional rebate. And what the intent of the pilot is to ready the workforce, and also to get data on what's in existence in current homes. Our Bambi program, which is the multifamily retrofit program, the core program is no cost energy consulting. If the property owner implements identified measures that result in a minimum of 15% energy savings, they are entitled to a flat $750 per unit rebate. This year, we have launched our clean heating pathway, where we offer an additional incentive for changing from electric to gas. And on the slide, you can see the eligible measures that are available through the Bambi program. Similar to messaging with the Home Plus program, the focus is really on improved health, in better indoor air quality, efficiency, GHG reductions, and we focus a lot on providing education to the property owner and the management. And the last program is our Codes and Standards program. And through that program, we provide training to building officials. And what we've been hearing is that one of the big barriers to heat pump water heaters, for example, is the amount of time it takes for the permitting and having to involve the building officials. So from our experience, there was not a lot of knowledge by building official staff on this technology. So we developed two trainings to help with what was going on in the marketplace and with local governments and decarbonization. The first was a heat pump water heater training that is offered to building official staff, and the other is around REACH code implementation. So the heat pump training really supports the regional programs such as BayREN and the BACMUD grant, as well as the CCA programs that similarly offer rebates for heat pump water heaters. And it supports this by training the plans examiners and the building inspectors on the fundamentals of the technology, so that there is hopefully less of a wait time and more understanding. This training has been offered so far 19 times, and we continue to get requests from other building departments. And then finally, as part of our codes program, we provide support to those jurisdictions in our territory that are interested in a REACH code around electrification. That includes helping them to understand about the REACH code process, going to their boards and that type of thing. And we have been doing that in collaboration with several of the CCAs in our territory that have also been offering money to help local jurisdictions on their reach code efforts. And with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Jenny. I will briefly describe the BayREN regional contractor heat pump water heater incentive program that I am running as part of Stop Waste under BayREN. And I just want to say before I forward the slides, thank you for giving me that control. We were able to develop this program with a grant from the Air District. And this is a midstream program to really focus on developing the market for these highly efficient residential appliances. We have 3 CCAs participating, and they're providing the funding for the incentives at $1,000 per heat pump water heater installed in their eligible customers' homes. And it's not using energy efficiency funds, even though BayREN does. This is kind of a parallel or complementary program. Because of the different funding source, it means that we can layer this with BayREN's Home Plus single family $1,000 incentive. So 1 application, 2 programs, and each heat pump water heater is eligible then for $2,000 in incentives. And here is the website if you want to learn more, bayren.org/HPWH. Let me get that going. Did it move? Hold on. Okay, whoops, and now it went too fast. Okay, so we're covering 6 of the 9 counties in BayREN territory. We do have 3 CCAs, as I mentioned. EBCE, East Bay Community Energy, covers Alameda. MCE has 4 counties, Marin, Napa, Solano, and Contra Costa. And Clean Power SF will be joining in October. That covers the county of San Francisco. And with those 6 counties, we're actually covering more than half of the residential market here in the Bay Area. And as Jenny mentioned, we're simultaneously making sure that when contractors pull permits, which are required for this work, they're greeted with knowledgeable building department staff. We also are supporting the multifamily decarbonization clean heating pathway, and we're cross-promoting heat pump water heaters with solar programs and with financing contractors. I saw quite active in the question and answer and chat is Miriam Jaffe-Block of the REAL financing program. And so we're working to make sure that the contractors who are doing financing know about the heat pump water heater programs as well. So cross-promotion. We're also creating a BayREN homeowner-facing website on heat pump water heaters to help consolidate a lot of those resources. Our details I'll go through very quickly. As I mentioned, it's $1,000 per installed heat pump water heater. They do need to be grid capable. This is something that Abby mentioned in terms of load management going forward and demand response programs that we anticipate will be coming from the utilities and CCAs. This is only for existing buildings. You must be switching from gas or propane. And it is intended for residential single family units or multifamily if it's a single unit heat pump water heater. I think I mentioned all of this, except we do have a number of other incentive programs here in the Bay Area, covering almost all of the geography here. Home Plus, you've heard about. Our program, the contractor facing one, you've heard about. Silicon Valley Clean Energy in Santa Clara County, San Jose, the city. Electrify Marin and Sonoma Clean Power all are offering varying levels of incentives for heat pump water heaters as well. And I believe Peninsula Clean Energy is planning something later this year. The cities of Palo Alto and city of Alameda also offer. So in summary, $700 in some places up to $7,000, which includes panel upgrade costs as well. And we'll actually have BayREN will have next week a cheat sheet of all those incentive programs for contractors. As you can imagine, it's a little bit hard to navigate with so many. I'd like to now turn it over to some questions for the panel. And I have seen some fantastic questions going in and some that have been upvoted, as we say, with a thumbs up. And so I think we're going to go straight to those questions. And actually, Rory, this is going to come to you first. So there's a question about the need for new utility or kind of grid capacity as we go down the decarbonization path. Not only do we have capacity issues in a home where we may need to upgrade that panel, which we know can be expensive and be a barrier, but we also sometimes have what we call the need for an additional drop from the utility, the grid to the home. And it can be a neighborhood problem and it can be very expensive. And so the question is around statewide financing programs, but there's a second question as well, just talking about, you know, the wild card of this here. So I'm curious if you can respond to that a little bit, or who is best to assume some of those costs.
It's not something that we have taken up yet, at least not in any of the proceedings that I'm following, but there is a lot of things going on at the PUC that it could be in something that I'm not aware of, and I may have to punt that to getting back to you sort of answer. And I'm aware of the issue. Right now we're just trying to get we're just trying to create a real market for these things. But that's a very good question, and I'm afraid I don't have a ready answer for you.
Great. Well, it's good to know that you've heard the question, and I think it's something that we'll probably hear in other forums as well. I want to actually ask another question that I think also might go to Rory and the CPUC. This question is about the impacts on bills, customer bills. And Rory, you mentioned this at the end of your presentation and something that came out recently in the phase 2 document. But has there been an analysis for disadvantaged communities, the cost to operate gas versus electricity? We know that gas is very cheap right now. I think that's going to be going up, and you probably may have some insight into that. But electricity costs are often not equal to the gas costs. Can you address that a little bit?
Sure, and yeah, I mean, you know, I would say that I would sort of defer to the staff proposal, as I'm going to probably. I might do that a few times, but that is the purpose of that issue being called out in the staff proposal, and it's something that we are very aware of. We don't want people's, we don't want that to be an unintentional consequence. And if we don't change the tariffs from where they are now, we're afraid that it will be a consequence. So it's something that we are all, and also for disadvantaged communities, they do qualify for the care rate. If they're a low-income customer. So, but it is something that we're very aware of, and we're watching. And again, I would really urge participation in that September 15th workshop and in written comments, because, but we certainly are aware of it.
And if I can add one more piece, just from the heat pump water heater perspective to that, Rory, is that because heat pump water heaters are 300, sometimes 400% efficient. Even though it is electricity, it's 3 and 4 times efficient from the gas. And so you might find that the initial costs are high to put in the equipment, but that the cost for running that equipment over the life of it is actually quite a bit lower.
Sure, and if it's grid enabled and it can, run mostly during the middle of the day, then when the electricity is plentiful and cheap, then that could be a real benefit to the grid, and we want to make sure that that customers are incented to do that. So
great. I'm seeing quite a trend to the questions going back to Rory, and I want to be sure and include Abby and Jenny as well. So I'm actually going to ask one of my questions, which is just about equity and looking at how we can consider that in this work on decarbonization in our communities. Jenny or Abby, would you be able to respond to that and how you factor that into the work that you're doing?
I think that one thing that I look at is how to frame it from a different perspective. And I think that the last slide that Abby showed was about the Green and Healthy Home Initiative in Contra Costa County, which I think is such a fabulous program. And it addresses what we're talking about through the public health lens. And I think, and I just learned right before from the county the Bay Run member, that they were awarded a grant from the state health department. So it's looking at what we're talking about from a health perspective at the most impacted communities. So that's something that I know they're very expensive programs to run, but I think that it's really a way to address not only a lot of the issues that we're talking about, but also equity.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that that it's really this issue of public health, and that's the connection. And when we start really talking about indoor, fossil fuel combustion as a toxin, and really start talking about the actual health impacts, and some really interesting studies have come out recently from UCLA and other places that really quantify the public health impact of burning fossil fuels in our homes. That's the connecting piece. And certainly it speaks to air districts, because we're first and foremost public health agencies. But then if we can integrate those into the AB 617, clean air community programs and the associated incentives, and into the clean air plans that those that program is producing in these vulnerable communities, that might be kind of a gateway, I think, to trying to bring more resources.
Great, thank you. I see a couple other questions that have to do with public safety, power shutoffs, and resiliency, and then specifically around battery storage as well. When looking at electrification, is this a concern? Because obviously if electricity is interrupted and gas isn't, how does that work for folks? And would someone like to respond to that?
I think one thing to remember is when electricity is interrupted, many of our gas appliances are interrupted as well, because they require electric ignition. And so that's a piece that we often don't realize. And so I think that needs to be part of the discussion as well. But Jenny can probably speak more to that than I can, but that's an important piece that we often leave out.
Great, thank you. And in terms of storage too, I know that load management piece that you discussed, Abby, is really important, considering either battery backups or thermal storage in terms of heat pump water heaters as well, to shift the load.
And I would just say that, public shower, PSPS, which is easier to say, is certainly a concern. And Abby can speak to this, as there are a lot of people that started buying backup generators, which are huge GHG emitters, but at the same time, you don't have electricity for 4 days. So, in a way you can't really blame them. So it's definitely something that's an issue.
We could have a whole webinar on backup power generation. It's this proliferation of these micro distributed, teeny tiny household size generators, because people, are freaking out about these PSPS events, but it's also an enormous explosion in data centers that are causing, it's another scale, but the number and size of backup diesel generators that are coming online that we're going to have with us for the next 50 years is terrifying. So I think this is a really important discussion, and it's an important piece of building decarbonization.
Thank you. Rory, I have a question for you, actually a couple I'm going to combine, about refrigerants. Thank you for raising that today and looking at lower global warming potential refrigerants going forward. One of the questions is about whether prices will come down soon, that there is a CO2, a carbon dioxide refrigerant residential heat pump brand, but it's more expensive at this time. And the second one was about PG&E programs replacing refrigerators and replacing domestic water heaters in the low-income weatherization program, or LIWIP, and whether those could also be required to have the lowest GWP refrigerants?
Well, for the first question, that's exactly what we're trying to do with the tech initiative, is bring the cost of the water heaters that we want to see and HVAC systems that we want to see in the market. We want to drive those prices down, and that's why we're offering the kicker incentives, which will morph into a requirement that any appliance in the program has a low GWP. So you know, I mean, our first proposal for this was that we start that immediately. We wanted to move pretty fast on that, but we got some pretty significant push. Basically, the industry said right now that's a non-starter. They cannot scale that up in the next year or two. They need a few years lag time to get that going. But it's certainly a priority of ours to ultimately have low GWP appliances be the standard. Sorry, the second question was?
Second question was about the LIWIT program and what PG&E
Yeah.
is doing in terms of refrigerators and water heaters.
I don't follow that as much. That's a part of the energy efficiency portfolio, and that's what that team is looking at. So I'm afraid I'm not aware of it. It seems as if we should be going in that direction, I would think. I know that CARB is going in that direction. I know CARB is really leading on transitioning away from high GWP refrigerants. So, but I don't follow that particular program all that closely.
All right, thank you. There's another question here actually about renewable natural gas, and this might be our last one. I'm curious what will happen if we actually get all the way to a decarbonization and you know, anaerobic digesters are being built to handle organics and reduce landfill greenhouse gas emissions and collect that for renewable natural gas. What will happen if we don't have natural gas pipelines any longer?
Well, I can take that. I mean, I think there can be. We're not really talking that much about decarbonizing industrial processes, and industrial processes and agriculture use a lot of natural gas. So, I think the market there would be large enough to absorb any increase in RNG that gets produced. That's my back of the envelope, off the top of my head analysis of it. But from what I understand, it's going to take a long time to get to scale that up to any sizable volume of RNG. And again, a lot of industry we're not talking about electrifying that sector of the economy, at least not at the PUC. I don't know.
Great, thank you. There's also Abby, a big fan of the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, made a comment in the question and answer. So that's great. People know about your program. We are out of time. I know that LGC has a little bit of a wrap up to do at the end. So I want to take this time to thank all of the attendees for your great questions. And I'm sorry that we couldn't respond to all of them. And I really want to thank LGC for organizing us so well. We did pretty well. And I want to thank Abby, Jenny, and Rory for speaking today and sharing your wisdom so that we can go full throttle into our decarbonization world. I think we need to. We know that the state has ambitious goals. And if our regional and statewide agencies can work together to make that happen, we'll all be better off. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to, is it Tia?
Yes, perfect. Thank you everyone for participating in our SEEK webinar. Apologies for our minor tech issues. I don't know, it wouldn't be 2020 without some issues, so I'm glad we were able to work it out. So thank you for your patience. Also, we're going to be sending direct links in the chat box for everyone to access. It's a link to our website. We are going to be posting the slides and this webinar on the SEEK website. And we also have a post-webinar survey. If you could fill out that survey, it'd be extremely helpful. We just want to know that the space we're creating and the content we're providing for local governments is actually useful. We don't want to assume, so we're trying our best. So thank you again for your participation, and thank you for our speakers. Without them, this webinar wouldn't be possible. So I hope everyone is able to stay safe and have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.